Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My next topic is blocking the means or obstructing the means to an evil end. al-Dhara'i, blocking the means. The expression, the two words, Dhara'i is the plural of Zari'a or Wasila, that is the means to something. And Sad is to block the means to something. The idea conveyed here is blocking the means naturally towards an evil end. Although sometimes it also employs opening the way towards a good result, towards a good end. But this is not in focus of our discussion of Sadd al-Dhara'i, because this applies to the Sharia generally. The Sharia is there to facilitate and open the way toward a desirable end. Therefore, in the discussion of Sadd al-Dhara'i, which is a recognized proof and strongly advocated by the Maliki school, it is in fact a Maliki doctrine. It goes hand in hand with the other Maliki doctrine, Maslaha, which we have earlier discussed. We are also here referring mainly to issues on which there is no clear text in the Quran or Sunnah or other sources. And we have a situation if there are different scenarios. If both the means and the ends are good, and there is no clear text in the sources about their hukum, about their ruling, then the subject is likely to fall under qiyas or maslaha or istihsan, and not particularly under Sadd al-Dhara'i. That is, if both the means and the ends are good, there are other proofs for that. But if both the means and the ends to something are evil, once again this falls out of our range. In that case, it's either a crime or a prohibition, and we may have evidence in other places. We are therefore concerned only when there is a discrepancy between the means and the ends. And usually the scenario is that lawful means are sometimes used in order to obtain an unlawful result. There is obviously a distortion in the application of some lawful means and manipulate it such that facilitate an unlawful result. For example, the double sale of Aina, sell and buy back. This is sale, and sale is lawful. But if someone sells a book for 80 ringgit or $80 and buys it back immediately from this person for 100, payable in 1 year, this is double sale and falls under sales. This is the Shafi'i position also. But if it is used such to become a means for riba, for usury, which is prohibited, then this is where we refer to the Sadd al-Dhara'i. The application of Sadd al-Dhara'i is concerned with these situations when there is some distortion in discrepancy between the means and the ends. Both the means and the ends may be physical or moral, they may be visible, and they may not exist both simultaneously at the same time, and we are here concerned not so much with the realities as we face, but with the objective expectation of certain realities that might materialize. For example, the police anticipates that tomorrow there is a demonstration and it is likely to lead to violence and take steps to prevent it. This is a case for Sadd al-Dhara'i. Nothing has happened. It is the objective anticipation and likelihood that a certain means might lead to a certain end, and therefore steps are taken now in order to prevent it. Therefore, we are concerned with the objective evaluation in likelihoods of certain things, even if they have not yet materialized. There is a little difficulty here that law usually concerns itself with things that have already happened, not ones that we may anticipate. But the Sharia, being a comprehensive system of jurisprudence, provides for eventualities that have not yet materialized, but they are likely to harm people in society. The actual intention and purpose of the person who indulges in this kind of activity is also not really very important. For example, the bay' al-aina, a person commits double sale and as a result riba. Whether he bay' al-aina is prohibited according to the majority, whether it leads to riba or not, or whether the person intends it for that purpose or does not intend, we prohibit it because there is a likelihood it will invoke riba. Other examples are the prohibition of illicit privacy or khalwa, which is also prohibited according to the majority. Illicit proximity between members of the opposite sex who are not married to one another is prohibited because of the objective anticipation that they might lead to zina. In actual fact, the people involved may not intend to commit zina, and it may not even happen. But it is on the basis of the anticipation, objective evaluation of that situation that we say that khalwa is prohibited. There is in the Quran an example in Surah 62, Surah al-Jum'ah, that prohibits trading during the actual time of the performance of Salat al-Jum'ah, congregational prayer on Friday. During that time, trading must be stopped. This is a prohibition. Regardless of the facts, people who engage in trading during that time may not intend to escape the Friday prayer, or it may not actually happen, but we don't proceed on those. We look at the objective evaluation in expectation of certain conduct that may materialize. In the Quran, textual evidence quoted in support of Sadd al-Dhara'i is found in Surah 6, verse 108, where the Quran prohibits Muslims from insulting the idol worshippers, from insulting idol worshipping, in case they also humiliate Islam and insult Allah. وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ عَدُوًّا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Do not insult the idol worshippers who may insult Allah out of ignorance. Now, this is an objective prohibition. Whether that may actually result to the anticipated conduct or not is not at issue. And the intention of the person is also not material. This idea of blocking the means toward anticipated ends has an alliance, as I earlier mentioned, with the idea of maqasid in maslaha. We look at beyond the actual conduct toward the objectives and the consequences of conduct. And this is also a comment related to this is made by al-Shatibi, the principal advocate of maqasid, that the lawgiver has intended certain consequences and objectives behind the rulings of the Sharia. We must not separate the two. the rule and its purpose, also the means and its anticipated ends. If there is a distortion between the two and discrepancy, then we need to take steps to prevent it. Should there be a situation when both the means and the ends, the means and the ends, could both of them lead to both good results and bad results? There is a conflict. Which would you prefer over the other? Then we refer to this legal maxim that prevention of evil takes priority over the attraction of benefit. There may be a scenario where the means and the ends and the discrepant application between them may sometimes lead to good results, also to bad ones. Our priority here is the latter, not the former. In addition, a reference has been made to Quran, Surah 2, verse 104. This is with regard to the manner of addressing the Prophet. The believers are enjoined not to say to the Prophet, Ra'ina, but say, pay attention to us and listen. وَلَا تَقُولُوا رَاعِنَا وَقُولُوا انظُرْنَا وَاسْمَعُوا. The story of this verse is that the Jews used this word, it's a homonym. Ra'ina means two things. One is pay attention to us, the other is our shepherd. Since it conveyed two differential meanings, and the Jews often use it with this derogatory application, the Quran ordered the believers not to use it. Not to use it because of the evil end and the kind of distortion that was anticipated. In the Sunnah of the Prophet also we have sometimes rulings. The creditor, one who extends a loan to someone else, is not allowed to take a gift from him, in case this becomes a kind of, a disguise for riba. Sometimes also in the Sunnah of the Prophet we have rulings that the hudud, prescribed penalties, are suspended during military engagement, during war. This is also in order to prevent a certain anticipated result. The anticipation is that Muslim warriors may defect in join the enemy forces, so suspend the hudud during that time. Lawful means expected to lead to an unlawful, undesirable end, and therefore a certain position is taken. There is, however, difference of opinion among the ulama in mazahib over the authority of Sadd al-Dhara'i. The Hanafis and the Shafis do not recognize Sadd al-Dhara'i as an independent source of law in judgment. And they say that the cases that fall under this could be resolved by reference to these other proofs like analogy, maslaha, istihsan, etc., and urf even. And therefore they don't recognize it as a proof independently. But the Malikis and the Hanbalis, being the principal advocate of Sadd al-Dhara'i, they recognize this as a proof of Sharia. And Al-Shatibi and Abu Zahra, they have both looked into these, the merits and demerits of the discussions, and have reached the conclusion that actually the areas of difference, the actual differential between these mazahib is limited, over limited in number of minor issues. In essence, there is basically a broad sphere of agreement among all the mazahib, and the differences that have arisen is actually over the evaluation of the grounds, the means that sometimes may or may not lead to a particular end. There is doubt those means are differently evaluated by different schools. But essentially there is very little difference. And from this point of view, the extent of the relevance of the means to the end, there are three positions taken. In fact, there are 4 areas of application of Sadd al-Dhara'i, as I will briefly illustrate. Firstly, when the means to something definitely leads to anticipated end, like someone who digs a deep well behind a door that is open to the public, and someone opens the door and steps into the well and falls into it. And this, the means definitely leads to its anticipated results, and it is prohibited. There is a general agreement among the mazahib, regardless of the theoretical differences, even a consensus that this type of resort to kind of means to lead to that kind of end is prohibited. There is no difference about it. Yet a distinction is made between 2 scenarios even here. Either that the means itself consists of a prohibition, such as in the example, or that the means may be something in the nature of mubah, permissible, and some argument therefore arises. For example, someone digs a well into his own property, into his own house, but a neighboring wall perhaps is damaged by what has been done here. Digging a well in one's own property is basically permissible, but the result that is materialized, if it is so close that it is actually anticipated that will be the result, then there is once again no difference that the person is liable to damages. But there may be certain different evaluation of that scenario. The second of the 4 situation is when the means to an end is most likely to materialize the anticipated end, but not always. By dominant probability, it is likely. Like someone who sells weapons to both sides during an open conflict. Selling weapons to both enemies during wartime, it is prohibited by the Hanbalis and Malikis because it leads to the loss of life and to evil ends. The Malikis and Hanbalis say it is haram. Others have differed, saying that selling of weapons is not in itself haram and one needs to evaluate the situation. Third scenario is when the means to an anticipated end frequently leads to that end, but it's not a dominant probability. By the sale of the double sale of Aina that we earlier gave an example can be given here again. That double sale is frequently likely to lead to riba, but it is possible that it may not lead to that. Nowadays, actually, Aina is often used as a means of generating liquidity, and not necessarily as a means to securing riba. Yet the Malikis have passed judgment that this Aina and also other varieties of buyu al-ajal, deferred sales, and they say they should be avoided due to ihtiyat, that one should be careful in case it leads to an undesirable results. And the Hanafis and Shafis, they take a slightly different position, saying is that the basic norm of Sharia with regard to such activities is permissibility. We want certainty and not necessarily to restrict people's liberties simply because of some likelihood that may exist. But the Malikis and Hanbalis give different example. A person enters a contract of marriage with corrupt intention, sexual gratification followed by a quick divorce. Is this kind of marriage unlawful? The Hanbalis and Malikis say yes, it is unlawful. The purpose of marriage is lifelong commitment, and this is abusive. The Shafis and Hanafis say, well, what you need to look is at the essential requirements and conditions of marriage. If there is a contract and this and that requirements are all fulfilled, it is a marriage, and we don't go beyond that. On this basis also the testimony of close relatives have been prohibited. Although there is a son for a father and vice versa, wife for husband, vice versa, there is this suspicion that it might distort the truth, and therefore there are differences, but basically because it frequently leads to undesirable result, although that may be very rather rare and less frequent. And the fourth scenario is that the means to an end rarely leads to its anticipated end. Someone digs a well in his property without any likelihood or intention, or a grape seller sells grape to someone in the marketplace or outside. If the buyer buy in large quantity and then make wine out of it, it's up to him. We cannot stop marketplace transactions just because of this suspicion it might. Imam al-Shafi goes even as far as to say that a murder weapon may be sold, even if we know that weapon has been used for murder. Well, this is a sale. The weapon does not commit crime. It's the people you are looking at. The basic position here is in this, the last example, and even before, that we ought to be careful not to restrict people's liberties and impose on people freedom just because of suspicions that are not very strong. There are sometimes also we conclude this discussion by giving some different examples. One is to giving bribe or giving ransom in order to secure the release of some Muslim prisoners. Is this lawful or not? Many have said that since this secures a lawful end, even if the means is unlawful, it's the reverse scenario. The means here is unlawful, the end is lawful, securing release of Muslim prisoners. Say generally Hanafis and Shafis say yes, it is permissible. But the Malikis and Hanbalis, again they say yes, but only to defend one's proven rights and not beyond that. One's proven rights, if it is in danger of loss, a person may give a bribe in order to do that, or ransom, but not more than that. We see that we have depicted scenarios where we move from areas of certainty into the shades of doubtful situations. And that is why that many ulama have given the advice that one ought to avoid a liberal recourse to al-Dhara'i. And if we do apply it, then it should be carefully regulated. Abu Zahra, I have frequently referred to his works. He says that it is preferable we take such positions over things on which we have some kind of textual evidence. The evil or the good that we want to avoid or secure through some means that we utilize should be the ones that are proven by the evidence mansus alay in the nusus. And finally, I draw briefly a distinction between the means to something and the preliminary to something. I have written about this in my chapter I would not engage in detail. The difference is that the means to something is not always leads to the same result, whereas the preliminary is a part of the result, leads to it. There is that kind of distinction. There is finally a certain distinction drawn between the means in the hila, Sadd al-Dhara'i, in recourse to what is known as legal stratagem or hila. The difference is that in Sadd al-Dhara'i, the means we are applying in order to facilitate good end, a lawful end. The hila opens the way towards an evil. That is the basic difference. And the hila in the means also differ in our context in the sense that in hila there is a specific intention to secure a certain result, whereas in the means we are not actually in the Sadd al-Dhara'i, as we said, we don't really look at the specific intentions in our objective assessment of the relationship between the means and ends. Thank you.